I want to welcome you all to our first round panel review of the pilot program. We had a few technical difficulties, so thanks for your patience. We're starting a few minutes late. So I just want to again thank the panelists here for being here and giving of your time to review the 15 applications that were received and passed along to you. I appreciate from the bottom of my heart that you offered to do this. So thank you so much for being here. And now Melissa is going to go over some housekeeping.
Hi, everybody who's here today. Welcome. I really hope we do have applicants and visitors here to watch this process, because it's just a good way to see how applications are reviewed by the city and to get some pointers and to just learn more about our process. So we really welcome the public here today. We're going to go through the applications one by one, and we are going to start. Each reviewer is going to introduce the application. So we're going to have, there are 15 total applications. So each reviewer is going to introduce 3 applications. They're going to say a little bit about the application and its relationship to the guidelines, and they're going to finalize their scores. They've already looked at all the applications. They've already submitted preliminary scores. So just want you to know that we're going to go through this relatively quickly today, and know that each reviewer has spent some time with this application. They've really looked at it more thoroughly. They have some really good thoughts about the application. So don't be surprised as we move through this process pretty quickly today, because this is really just finalizing our process. Applicants won't be able to comment on their application during this process. We are going to go by the application only. And the only time that you could make a comment, I'm going to ask you to do it in the Q&A only, would be if a panelist says something that misrepresents something that is actually in your application. So an example of that would be if you talked about a film crew of 20 and the panelists mentioned a film crew of 200, or whatever it might be, and that your application didn't say that, we would just ask you to go into the Q&A and make that comment saying that it was misrepresented in the panel discussion, and we'll make sure that the panelists know that before we move on. But again, do it during the review of your application, because we're going to move relatively quickly, and we can't go back to the applications later. So we want to make sure you make those adjustments now. And the only thing that I would ask is sit and listen to more than one application. It's really good to hear how the panel is reviewing things in total, and you can't always get that full picture when you're just listening to your application only. So spend a few minutes here, and welcome, and thanks for being here. And we're going to start with the first application that Diana's going to put up on the screen. And the first reviewer is going to be Todd, and he's going to review the first 3.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. So here's the first proposal. It is called Reparations Now. The proposal is being made by Amend the Mass Media Group. The budget is under 100,000, and they're asking for slightly less than $20,000. It's a documentary series that is intended to follow the history of the need for and the fight for reparations for the descendants of African slaves in the United States. It's going to explore how this has come about for Japanese Americans, Native Americans, and they also talk about Jewish Holocaust survivors. It's going to interview people who have either been on the front line arguing for reparations, or those who are actively supporting it. The treatment is organized geographically. So 4 areas: West, Midwest, East, and South. And after they do that, the final part of the documentary is going to be focused on reparations advocacy. The The only comment I really had about this is I was somewhat confused about the support services groups they were listing. The attachment on the application is really not in sync with what has been proposed by them. That's it for an intro.
Okay, and any other comments or discussion?
Well, I think the only thing to say here is that this is, I think it's very much in sync with the community impact criteria that we have. Clearly, this is high representation, and they have significant number of local hires and significant connection to marginalized communities in this.
Great. Any other panelists want to make any comments?
I'll say I agree with what Todd said in regards to their presentation compared to the budgeted breakdown. I would have liked to have seen the detail there be supported for, this is pretty industrious project.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with what you said.
Okay, so if there are no other comments,
If Mark had one.
go ahead. I'm
I-
sorry.
I-
I'm sorry, Mark.
I'm curious about the estimated local hires and estimated number of Sacramento vendors. I can't quite tell from the treatment or the other rubrics who these people would be and why there are so many for a project like this. I'm curious as to those specs.
Yeah, Mark, I can't answer that question because I have the same questions from the attachments they had.
Okay. Okay, if there are no other comments, then I'll ask you to finalize your scores and just give me a thumbs up when your scores are final.
So quick question here, Melissa. So Mark and I have both raised questions about the hires and the support services company. We don't have any evidence beyond what they're claiming. So I'm not sure I feel comfortable reducing a rating for them based on basically no evidence. I understand it's probably the burden is on them to provide the evidence to us, but that may be just our inability to see it.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to go by what's in the application and what the rubric says. So if they've met the, substantially met the qualifications based on the rubric, then you would score accordingly. And if you feel like they haven't, then you could adjust your score.
Okay. All right.
Okay, everybody set? All right, then we're ready to move on to the next applicant, which is number 15. And that's also going to be Todd.
Okay, give me a second here.
Yep.
Okay, this is proposal by Orlando Wilkerson. It is called the Sniffer Three. Local production company, dwell points. The budget is under 100,000. They're asking for $21,250. It is intended to be a short film that revolves around a Sacramento detective with a gifted sense of smell, thus the sniffer, who has to stop his arch enemy, Odorless Joe, from shipping a dangerous new formula to Nazi Germany. Apparently, this is number 3. Previous episodes have appeared on a YouTube channel. I think, generally this You know, to look at representation here, the implication is that the filmmakers themselves are where this comes from. It's their perspective. I don't know what their I don't know if they're African American or Latinx or whatever, but that's the implication of the proposal that they've made and description they've put forward. I don't think there's anything necessarily about the treatment itself that suggests any high level of representation. That's it for me.
Okay, anybody else want to chime in with any other comments?
I had just one question, Melissa, and
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I should have some practice. So when, do you guys, there is a differentiation question about hotel stays versus short-term rentals.
Mhm.
And so when we're in there, should we just count them all as like one?
That's going to be a Jennifer question.
Jennifer, do you want to count them? So if someone says there's like, it's not this
Yeah.
one, but there's 3
So-
short-term rental nights and hotels, can we count them all as like?
Yeah, so most people, when they come to film in Sacramento or they're shooting here and they're bringing people in from out of town, they're going to put their more above the line people in a hotel, and then they may, or depending on that person's preference, they may want an entire house or an Airbnb. So I actually would say that those are two different questions, and you would add them together to come up with the total number of hotel nights. So hotel nights, and I can clarify this in the guidelines for future rounds. Hotel nights includes Airbnbs
Okay, perfect. Thank
or
you.
short-term rentals. Yeah.
Okay.
Not an issue for this applicant because they have 0 on both of those.
Okay, any other comments before we finalize scores for the second applicant? Okay, then I'll ask you to submit your final scores. Okay, is everybody good? Ready to go? All right, then we're going to move on to the Todd's third
Okay,
applicant, number 14, the Untold documentary series.
okay, thanks, Melissa. So this proposal is by Janine Rashid. It's called The Untold. It's a documentary series, local production company Flick Out. The budget is over 100,000, and I was somewhat confused about what they're actually requesting. There are both references in the budget documents and in their slide presentation that they're looking for somewhere between 1.4 million and $2 million. The series is about victims of police brutality, and it presents itself as an effort to bridge the gap between law enforcement and at-risk communities by showcasing both the dangers and the responsibilities that law enforcement faces. Featured subjects are no surprise: Stephon Clark, George Floyd, Oscar Grant, Ahmaud Arbery. And it is intended to create actionable circumstances with links to relevant websites promoting advocacy around both policy and legislative changes. I was somewhat confused about the support service company documentation. The attachment, again, has really nothing to do with the number they've put in there, and I couldn't find anything in the budget that clarified it. That's it for me.
Okay, does anybody else have anything that they want to add or comment on based on what Todd just said? No. Any additional thoughts? Anything you made notes of? Okay, it's a quiet group.
So I just want to echo Todd, the budget, it was a little bit hard to tell there, and it might be though, because it felt, there's like 3 different projects in here, with a website, kind of a mobile app project, and then the document, kind of the film part of everything too.
I agree with the budget. Because when I looked at the actual budget line item, you have the 41, or I guess 42 ask out of the 1.1 million, which is a pretty big ask overall. So
Okay, then we're ready to finalize our scores. And also, if you have any of these comments that you want to add in the comment section or the note section of the applicant, it'll be helpful. I know Jennifer, for anybody else who's watching again, Jennifer will be taking some notes. So if anybody wants to confer with her after the panel, you can do so. Okay, and if we're good, we can move on. And I think Cameron, you're up with the next 3. And your first one is applicant number 13.
yep. So applicant number 13 was Gift of Fear, and this was submitted by Jack Kohler. At a high level, Gift of Fear is about the many Native American women that have gone missing in this state, as well as how many women in general are human trafficked in California. The story attempts to deal with many issues facing teens, facing parents, and facing the social welfare agencies, as well as drug-related issues in Native American, as well as gang-related issues and law enforcement agencies. And so they applied for the over $100,000 budget, with a budget of $294,510. And then specifically, they're looking for reimbursement awards around their post-production, as well as some of the services provided by the city, like parking and fees, those types of things. Some of the standouts to me were just their intentional focus on elevating a storyline reflective of the lived experience of a marginalized community. And with the proposed budget, I felt like there was a strong number of local hires.
Great, thanks. Any other additional comments? Anybody want to add to what Cameron said or different thoughts? Okay, then we're ready to finalize scores. Okay, if you're good, then we'll move on to the next applicant, number 12.
Alrighty, I'll introduce applicant number 12 is So Sacramento Family Events Film Projected, I think is what it was called. This was submitted by Marcus Johnson, and at a high level, this project aims to promote local and business talent by including them in promotional videos for each of their businesses on their list. They will obtain interns who want to learn about the film industry and those in school currently taking classes in the field. They want to help people who grew up in urban areas such as Sacramento and go to colleges like USC to obtain successful career opportunities from watching these particular projects. In terms of their budget, they applied for the over $100,000 budget submission with post production, and what I had pulled from the budget was $80,606. And for me, some of the highlights was I thought they had intentionality to elevate small businesses with promotional videos. I think that that's key for a valuable asset for them to continue to grow. Additionally, the neighborhoods and the localities that they were targeting, such as Oak Park, Meadowview, Del Paso Heights, Mac Road, were all areas that I know are in areas of focus for the city's inclusive economic development plan. And then they also had a high number of local hires and various locations shown throughout Sacramento.
Great, thank you. Any other comments to add? Additional thoughts, different thoughts, or?
I'm wondering if anyone sees, like I see, that this application seems to be asking the city to underwrite a business. What I see in the treatment and in the application is promotional videos. And I'm unclear as to where that fits into the rest of the submissions that we're looking at.
I'd build on that too, Mark. If you look at the list of locations, Las Vegas, Oakland, San Francisco,
Yeah.
San Diego, LA.
There's very little to do with Sacramento.
I mean, there are obviously a number of Sacramento locations, but I'm not following the purpose of this clearly enough.
I think that the number of everything seems to be inflated, which certainly brings their score up. But that type of content, I agree. I question the validity in this. And the numbers just seem extraordinarily high for what they're attempting to do locally.
But again, it brings us back to the question of, are we taking them here at the word that they put on the paper? And I'm not sure how we do this for differently by application.
Jennifer, is there anything about feasibility that you want to address or you'd like the panelists to be taking into consideration?
So I think that moving forward, Megan is in the webinar as well, and she's taking notes on the policy issues. And I think that these are some of the things that I knew were going to come into question, but we really are trying to take the bias out of the deciding factor. So it may be in future rounds that we're just, requiring more information so that they can prove to us exactly where they're filming and where's their location agreement, that we would need more of this information, I think, to be able to know feasibility wise whether they'll be able to actually do the project. I would remind you that these funds and these grants are reimbursable grants, so they will have already spent their money on their project, and so if the project never comes to fruition, they will not be receiving the grant funds. They have 180 days in order to go into physical production and submit receipts for towards the grant. I think it's a question. It's a bigger conversation that we're going to have after this first round, and we're just going to continue to hone and refine this process. I think this first round was kind of like, let's just get that money out there and let's do the best we can and see how it goes. But definitely I'm listening to and taking down your comments, and I would like to have a further discussion, eventually get more of your opinion of how you felt it went, how we can make the process stronger. All of those things help me tremendously. So and I think,
bearing in mind that all of these projects, the maximum that they can hope to get from us at this point is $5,000.
yes.
I mean, so when you have a budget that is, up over 100,000, it begs the question of, where's the rest of the money coming from to create that confidence that the work will be done in time.
That's what I think that's what we, one of the things of we could add a question that says, how much of your film is funded? Show us proof of your funding. Those are the types of questions and things that are going to come out of this process. And so, I definitely appreciate this information. It's going to help me make a better grant process.
All right, thank you. If there's no more discussion on this application, we can take your scores, final scores. And I believe, Cameron, you have one more, yes?
Hey, give me
Number
1
11.
second. I'm just amending my.
Yep, sounds good. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go.
Alrighty, we can go up to the next one. Alrighty, so the next submission, which is submission 11, the title is A Little More, which was submitted by Jordan Simpson. At a high level, this project is focused on a woman interested in esoteric things that explores her own lucid dream, in which Owner Not from Lucid, which was a prequel that was already created, rescues her from the authorities of this particular dream world. This submission was under $100,000. And I guess one of the notes that I kind of pulled was the number of local hires was one of the areas that stood out to me.
Did anybody else have any comments on this applicant?
I will say, Aaron's point too, stood out too, is that there was no history of using local locations. She had added some, I think, a YouTube of what they'd had before. And so I thought that was good.
On the question of does the storyline reflect the lived experiences of people of color, LGBTQ plus, disabled, or other marginalized communities? The answer is 0. So they may have a lot of local hires, but the subject itself doesn't address issues of import to the community.
Okay, any final comments? And if not, we'll take your scores. And when you're ready, we're going to move on to Kathy Rodriguez. Your first one would be applicant number, oh no, I'm sorry, Lori. I skipped ahead. Lori, your applicant number 10.
Okay. This was, do digital curanderos use eggs in their limpias, which is one of those titles that I think will make anybody do a double take, but sometimes that can be brilliance, you know? So Roberto Fatal is the submitter for this. The project's under $100,000. You know, it struck me as one of the, am I on the right one? Yes. It struck me as something that had an amazing, first of all, their budget was very well done in comparison to many of the others. The presentation deck and the focus that they put on that and the effort that they've put into it showed me a real commitment to their project. It certainly fits the criteria for the marginalized communities and representation of that community, in addition to the cast and crew. I felt it was very reasonable. If anything, it seems like they would need more time to produce this, but the concept itself, let me see if I can explain. It's actually being produced by the Sundance Institute's Indigenous Film Fellowship, which right there tells me that there's something really special about these components. The writer-director is also a professor at Sac City College. You can see the film as an homage to their Indigenous, Chicano, queer, and transgender communities in their hometown of Sacramento, and also their adopted town of Oakland. So there is that reference. The log line is a California barrio is disappearing after its residents upload the consciousness to the internet and leave behind their bodies and the pain of carbon-based life. Now depressed and faithless, the community's curandera/healer must convince their last living friend to support their decision to upload. This film is a rare opportunity to highlight the historically Latino, Latina, Latinx neighborhoods on Franklin Boulevard and Broadway, where the film will be shot, as well as Indigenous, Latinx, queer, trans people in those communities. I really was in support of this one, just because I think that it really does touch on some of the components. The effort is there, the realism in how they're approaching their project and what they're asking for. It's a little bit of a higher budget, but I also feel like they're trying to accomplish something where if you can think in terms of some previous films, that really create a unique sort of environment that you haven't seen before. That's what I think they're trying to accomplish here. And it appears to me like they're capable of doing it. They're approaching it with all the right components, and it would meet the needs of everything that we're asking for this grantee.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this application?
Just, I completely agree with those comments.
Okay. Okay, if there are no other comments, we will take your score, your final score. And then Laura, you're up with the next one, applicant number 9.
Okay. And this is building Oblivion, which was an interesting concept that was shown in a proof of concept video. The video itself was a little bit more impressive to me actually than the presentation, because I felt like that showed the artistic slant that they were really going for. Ultimately, this is an artist who had lost a job and begun creating art, and really in a very quick turnaround was able to become accepted in Wide Open Walls, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with that program here in Sacramento. And she overcame a lot of different hardships to not only change her career path, but to be accepted in that world. And in her concept, she really wasn't, and so she had to fight for that. You know, my basic thought was that it was an overreaching budget and not a lot of experience that went into the production planning. So I would hope that there's more of that we're just not seeing. And their shooting schedule, you know, really doesn't support that. Shooting 24 hours over a 3-week period. It just felt like what they were asking for was not realistic for that amount of time. My notes here. I want to support somebody who's, you know, going into different directions in their career path. But I just didn't feel like the realistic budget items were there. The understanding of what was being asked to support, you know, the claims. Several of the services used, but Yeah, it wasn't my strongest scorer, but I certainly want to, support art in whatever way we need to. So maybe it's the growth of it,
What are your
Okay.
thoughts about the community impact part of this?
Say that, what was it?
This is Todd. I was just curious if you had any thoughts about the community impact criteria and how it relates to this proposal, if at all.
It was one of those cases where it's a yes or no question when it comes down to the feedback from the producer. And the percentage of marginalized communities in the cast and crew and the lived experiences of those people, I see that in her responses, but I don't really see that in her storyline. So again, I feel like the proposal was missing a lot of components that would have been able to strengthen the needs a lot greater.
Additional comments or thoughts or questions? Okay, then we'll take your final scores. And then Lori, your last review, number 8.
Okay.
Get it up.
And this is one where I too, I don't know the film team themselves. I do know their animating director, who is really who the documentary is about. And so I don't have any, fiscal relationship with him whatsoever. I can only tell you what I know about what he is capable of doing, and the fact that it's being recognized in this documentary. I feel like it's really important. And I think that they've approached this in a very not only complete and systematic way of telling a story, but it's also supporting the growth of the industry, which is a whole nother path that we need to, really look at in this community. And I really just feel like sometimes there are people that really should be put on a pedestal to set a direction, and that Sean Sullivan, who is the teacher at Sheldon High School that's being highlighted in this documentary. So the documentary, let me read this, captures the achievements of Kate on Studi as a world-renowned high school animation program in Sacramento, California. The founder and the teacher of the class, Sean Sullivan, transforms a group of novice art students into a team of award-winning animators. Along the way, each student learns professional and life skills that inspire, educate, and in some cases, save lives. So what Sean Sullivan has been able to do in the film world and for aspiring artists of high school age is something that I think is going to change the direction of the industry, in that he's trying to teach them industry level skills without having to invest in a 4-year degree that's going to put them $100,000, $250,000 in debt or more. And this is something that he's found a path for, and is not only sharing, but he's teaching. He's teaching that. So yeah, I'm fully supportive of this project, and I think that this is one of those ones that we will reap the rewards of this type of a project and the information that it shares, in addition to entertainment value, which always is so important. I think for the community, the educational value of what he's bringing to the table and how it can inspire kids at much younger ages is a really important goal that we can achieve here. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like I have to say this. I agree. Sean Sullivan, he's extremely well known, extremely highly regarded. I think everything you said is true. What is a question mark in my mind is sort of very tenuous economic development connection to Sacramento. And essentially,
I don't know that it's really reflected here.
Remember that, and remember that you're looking at only what's reflected in the application. So I just want to
Oh.
remind everybody that
Sure.
these projects are being scored just based on what you see in the application. And it's great to hear all of your comments about what you know about the individuals or the applicants, and just make sure you keep your scoring to what you're seeing here.
so what do you see as the economic development connection to the city of Sacramento?
Well, in reading his information specifically, I think that is really something that is not mentioned. I think, my own knowledge of it will tell me that answer, but I don't believe that that's really referred to in this presentation as far as economic development.
Yeah, and just remember that people can learn from these applications. So the comments will reflect what they didn't put in the application that might be where their score is reflected. Okay, any other thoughts? If not, take a look at your scores. Make sure you're ready with your final score before we move on. Diana can put up the next applicant, number 7. And this is Kathy. Your interest.
My notes. Okay, so number 7 is a project that is under $100,000. The person putting in Ozala Cody, I hope I got that right. And her project is called Classy Hippie Tea. And it's a web series, it's a 3-part, and it is actually centered in Oak Park around a tea shop. And so it is kind of how the start of it, the pandemic, and then the after part of it. When I looked at the budget, unless I'm wrong, it's about like $7,200 to do this. Everything is takes place here locally. It's in a local location. And the idea of showing something that came out of pandemic was interesting, to do that, especially a small business that came to be during this time continued, and then how it brightened or impacted the community at large. That's what I have to share.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, then I think we're ready for our scores. And we can bring up applicant number 6.
Can I make a quick comment on the last one, just because it was something that stuck to
absolutely.
me, was just with the knowledge that number of hotel nights is connected to short-term rental nights. That was something that for me was a key component of the application. I originally looked at the estimated hotel nights alone, and that dramatically had a shift in my economic impact. So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, then Kathy, your second one, number 6.
Okay, so number 6 is also under $100,000 project. It's called the Big Histo, which is a documentary. And I believe this is the one, the budget was a little hard for me to follow, but I think if I got it right, it was about 37,000, the budget part. And this is actually like a serious film talking about, you know, the implications of OBGYN in the Black communities and how procedures and things were done and what that effect has now when we talk about reproductive justice in there. And one of the things, I hope it's okay to share this, I found interesting what she wrote in here because she has a very good knowledge of what she wants to talk about in the project itself, was how this narrative started so long ago that Black women could, you know, take pain at a higher level. Because now we see it in modern times that in times when they go to the doctor, they have to keep explaining the pain that they're in. And so the thought process behind this was very interesting there. It's obviously, you know, very, you know, focused in this community, but also would parallel to other, you know, women in particular who also had no say about what was going on to in their bodies. So this is the project that she has. I think out of all of them, this seemed to be, for lack of a better term, like one of the more serious films that came across. And then actually the point, and I think this is why Ruby and I asked this kind of similar to Cameron, when you look at hotel nights and short-term rentals, they're very few. So when you look at economic impact, it's not as high as some of the other applicants that are in there, but it's because there's such opportunity for people, for them, they don't need those rooms. So that's probably something to look at in the next time around is, you know, is that really like a key criteria?
I will just comment that in the rubric, we have allowed for that. So the bigger projects are weighted higher on, well, they're weighted differently if you're above 100,000 or below 100,000. So we figured that the local smaller projects would be local to Sacramento. So they're of course not going to have as high as hotel nights. So they're, if you look at the rubric, you'll see that they're weighted differently. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you, Jennifer. I think it's good for anyone watching to hear that too.
And I'm not seeing any budget on this. Is that?
It was, I think this is one that was a little harder to find, Lori. So
You had to just keep scrolling and it
you have to keep scrolling and
shows up
scrolling.
on like page 3 of the budget. So it would really be printed out and you'd have to put it side by side.
I
So you'd have to reference back up to page 2 to
Mhm,
see it. So I think it was just the conversion from Excel to PDF.
Gotcha.
Okay, other comments?
Okay, I am seeing in the Q&A
Yes,
that,
we do need to go back to that. I just wanted to get this one done and then we go back
Okay.
to that one.
okay,
Okay.
great.
Any other comments? And then we can take your final score. And when you're ready, we did have a comment in the Q&A from the application, which was the Classy Hippie Tea, that application. And it was from Azola Cody, who said, I never mentioned the pandemic in the treatment, so I'm a little confused. Does anybody want to comment about that? I just want to make sure that you know that.
Yeah, let me actually find, because I was going through that one. Doesn't know, but I hope it's okay. I really like tea, so I spent a lot of time on this one. 7?
Yeah, I believe it was the one right before this last one we reviewed.
Is number 7.
Yeah.
The 3-part series.
I'm reading the question from Ozola Cody, and I'm confused. I don't understand the question, Ozola. Could you be a little clearer?
It's just that it's not the main.
You know what? I apologize. It might be me because I took it where it's that now he wants to give back to his community and nurture his dreams. There is, however, that pandemic and economic setbacks have rocked his world. So it's in part 2 of the web series. So the 3-part series when she's talking about the storyline.
Okay, okay, so
So
it
it's right.
was referenced.
It was referenced here in part 2. Yeah. And so can you make his dreams a reality? Watch his, his life parallels the historical journey of T.
Okay, and I think just the response in the Q&A is that that's not the main focus. So is obviously was mentioned in the application.
Yeah, it was more just like how he starts, what, the middle part of it, and then, how his dreams come true and impact. So
okay,
it's not, but it was mentioned in here.
okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
If anybody, made any reference to that as they were scoring, just keep in mind about that. And we also got a comment from the last applicant. Please note that the inclusion Black trans womb holders is also included in the film. I wanted to confirm that my budget was submitted via PDF file. So I'm assuming the budget was in there and everybody's okay with that. That was not a question.
No, yeah, the budget was in there. I think just Cameron's part, it's just you flip through it.
Yep.
And except it's all, I think, and it was just a conversion part of it.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so I think we are ready to, Kathy, your last review, which I believe was number 4. I think we went from 6 to 4.
So far, yeah, because there was no 5, correct?
Yeah.
So this one. Mars Police. So Mars Police is under 100,000. It was submitted by Matt Brown. I'll find a story. This one, I will probably need to come up with a comment. So when I read this, it is a sci-fi pilot and told about 2 men who find themselves in this situation where one is the one at home and then the person who comes in to rob him, another man, and then they're, what's the right one? Right. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. This is a computer one. I got it confused. The sci-fi pilot. So it's basically a personal discovery to becoming who are you meant to be. And remember correctly. It's, all local. This storyline itself, according to what they put in here, it doesn't reflect any lived experience here of a marginalized community. Although it's possible that the crew will be more reflective of that.
Okay, any other comments? Other people want to weigh in? Questions about this application or things you'd like people to know? Okay, if we have no other comments, then we can do final scoring. Okay, we're ready to move into the home stretch with the last three applicants. Mark, you'll be up next and we'll be looking at application number 3.
Yeah.
Submitted by Taylor McMahon. And I see that it's a television project, a television series project based on yard crashers. So I'm taking this from the treatment. If we work with, this is from the treatment, if we work with the city on at least 2 of our 6 desired episodes, we will bring value to the city in form of updated, renovated, and beautified public spaces, resulting in increased property value in the selected areas. I'm a little unclear as to what that means. And that's my only reservation, apart from the reservation that I had earlier with another piece. It seems that we're being asked to subsidize what's in effect a commercial venture. I don't know if there's any prohibition against that, but it's a question mark in my mind. But the rubrics lined up as they lined up. And I don't see anything radically wrong with any of the crew list, the requirements locally. Seems to be putting some money into local production pockets. And that's a good thing. That's always a good thing. So I find no major objection to this, other than I wasn't quite prepared to see more than one submission asking in effect for support for a commercial venture. That I don't know if that means anything, but it means something to me. But as I say, the rubrics lined up as they lined up.
Anybody else have any thoughts about that? Or anything else in this application?
Just one comment about the local hires. I think he says there are 9 local hires. When you look at the crew list, it's a very generous interpretation of Sacramento. It's the region.
Agreed.
Okay, anyone else? Final comments on this applicant? Okay, we'll take your scores. And we'll bring up application number 2.
The bag. This is submitted by Tanisha Offord Nesbitt. And I have a little difficulty with this treatment, understanding exactly what it is. It seems to be describing something between a documentary and a narrative fiction piece. But that's just the way things are, I guess. Focuses on mental illness, specifically depression and anxiety. My only objection to this submission is that none of the support materials explain how this is to be executed. Is it a documentary? Is it a fiction film? I can't tell. But the rubrics lined up and they yielded a score that is in a lot of these budgets and crew lists, I see enormous amounts of people, and I'm trying to square those with the treatment and failing miserably. So it may be that for example, I see in this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 photographers. Not entirely certain where these budgets are coming from, but that's my concern here. Is I'm not sure how to interpret it, and I'm not sure how the budget figures and crew lists were put together, because they don't seem to be put together with a sense of let's try not to put more people on than we need in the best spirit of low budget production. So those are my reservations.
I will say, Mark, I took this as a narrative, not a documentary, but a narrative with a specific message slant. And, I had to kind of go back to it, and in thinking about the disenfranchised, realize that, mental health is definitely in that category. I felt, as you, that the budget really didn't correspond, and nor was it done in full. So I would like to see way more preparation for me before handing somebody money.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions? And I will take your final score on that. And we'll move to application number 1.
It's One Night in Suburbia, submitted by Jack Dever. This submission most closely resembles something that I would think would be up for a grant in Sacramento. It seems to be a production that is right-sized. I'm convinced of its entertainment value for some reason. Just the log line is interesting. I don't see any specific local crew people identified. I see positions identified, but no crew people. And I don't know if that's a deal breaker for anyone else, but the way I judge projects is by who's associated with them, who's attached to them. So I think that would be an important component. Crew list with contact information. Don't see any names or contact information. So it's aspirational at this point. But this is, no doubt about it, a short film taking place completely in Sacramento. I'm looking now at the review specs. It's rather low on the representation of the marginalized communities. It's very low that, and it's low on the people of color, LGBTQ, disabled, and other underrepresented groups. It's low on those. So viewed from that perspective, it's a very mixed proposal of quite good attributes and some serious drawbacks in the representation of the community aspect. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, any other panelists would like to add?
I just want to restate that a slightly different way. So if there's questions about how many local people are involved, and it doesn't have community impact in the way the rubric asked us to rate that, and there are no hotel nights, there isn't much economic consequence of doing this as a return on a grant. But I do agree with Mark that of the many things we looked at, this one does seem the most doable.
This one is the most consistent with what we see produced locally. You know, it's interesting because while it's viable and it's probably got more opportunity for legs and getting completed, because it doesn't meet the criteria for this particular grant, it's scoring rather low. And I think that's one of the things that we can look at moving forward is the weight of the message versus the support of all things artistic. So, you know, we'll learn as we go, I think, how we weight things specifically. I do know this filmmaker, I do know that, you know, he's perfectly capable of getting it done. A lot of short films specifically don't crew up or even cast until you're, you know, literally 60 days away from shooting at best, just because the issue of getting people to commit their time on a short-term project is not as easy as if it was a longer feature film or something along those lines. So I don't question that he can fill those roles and fill them with good people, but he certainly has not represented that here in his application.
That's great. And those are good comments to add for the applicant who may submit again. So if everybody wants to finalize their scores, then I think we have come to the end of all of our applicants.
I'd like to clarify too that the applicants that are not selected, they roll over to the next. Is that correct? They do not? They have to.
No, if we did not award, like say only one person applied for above $100,000 grant, there would be a gap. There would be one additional that would roll over. What happens now, and what we're hoping is that people will take these notes. We're going to take all of this information and about the rubric and the process that we just went through as a panel back to the table, figure out you know, what needs to be changed, what could be better, how do we move forward from here. But all of these applicants hopefully will take what they've heard, and hopefully you will all have an opportunity to go back and add your comments. Or this is being recorded. Hopefully they can watch their section live again and make those corrections and make a better application. That's the hope, that every single one of these people will make a stronger application the next time around. So yeah, that's what we're hoping.
All right, so we are going to order the applications. I don't know if anybody needs to take a 2-minute break, or you want to just sit here and wait? That was quick.
Technology.
So,
And
Okay.
I actually want to take a second to compliment you, Jennifer, on, I know we're doing this for the first time, but the system that you selected and that you created has been really very easy to work with and very thorough.
That's good to hear. Thank you for that feedback. Yeah, Submittables is a really good program. We used it for the CARES Act. Is that what you're talking about? We used it for the CARES Act grants too, and it's really
Diana,
easy to
could
work
you
with.
make that a bit larger?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
It's always just me usually. who always has to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jennifer, I think you
Okay.
should go through this and see where you see the awards.
Yep. So I think it is pretty clear that our below 100,000 front runner is the team at Amend the Mass Media Group. So congratulations to them. They will be awarded the $500 or 5,000, sorry, didn't mean to scare you. For all that work for $500, $5,000 grant. Let's see, Diana, if you can scroll down to the next top below 100,000. Oh, there we are. So the next one is Roberto Fatal, and his film is the second grant that came in the highest for under 100,000. So congratulations to both of those projects. You will both be receiving $5,000 reimbursable grant. I will be in touch with paperwork and how to move forward from here. Now, if we go to the grants for above $100,000, we're looking at Marcus Johnson's project and Jack Kohler's project. So congratulations to both of you. Again, you will each be receiving a $5,000 grant, and I will be in touch with how we move forward from here. The post-production grant was also awarded. The highest post-production was awarded to Amend the Mass Media Group. So their project has now received the $5,000. They will receive the $5,000, and then again $2,500 for the post-production grant. We are likely changing this moving forward into rounds. I just wanted to make that note right now for those of you who just applied for the post-production grant and didn't get it. Please reapply, take the notes that were given to you, make a great application, and just know that we're separating it out now. You will not be able to apply for a post-production grant at the same time you're applying for a production grant. So that's one change that we sort of saw through the process that will be better in the future, but for this round itself, Amend the Mass Media Group has been awarded both the below $100,000 grant and the post-production grant. So congratulations to them. Good work. I think that's it. I will be in touch with to the winners, to the people who are not awarded grant. I cannot stress again, please take these notes, listen to the entire review process again, kind of understand what what the panelists were saying about your application and adjust. Feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I can help you through the process if you need help with your budget, or if I can get you a template or that sort of thing. I'd be happy to help out. I think we also moving forward are looking to put in some workshops for people getting ready to apply for the grant. This money came at us very quick and we were rushing to get it out the door. So this first round, I think we learned a lot, and we'll continue to learn through this process. So thanks for bearing with us. It's not a perfect science, it's a pilot program, and this was just the beginning, round one. So I want to thank you all, to the panelists and to the applicants. Reach out if you have any questions, and hopefully the panelists all set up something for us to get together so we can discuss the process of how it all went. Okay, so thank you. Anybody have any other questions?
I just wanted to say thanks to all the panelists. This is not easy work, as you know, and it's, having to apply a rubric to applications is sometimes really hard, and I think you did a great job. So thanks for all your good work.
And thank you, Diana and Melissa. Thank you, Melissa, for running it. I think I'm just going to have you run all of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for doing that. And Diana, thanks for being behind the scenes. I appreciate all your help.
Thanks, Diana. Bye, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.